Let's answer the question real quick. From your guys' perspective, would you rather a semifinal be a great test of fitness or fun to watch?
Of all the people that probably aren't in the TTT ecosystem, like I have a ton of respect for JR and how he approaches his programming. And the challenge for any event organizer or programmer like that is trying to find a balance between a good test of fitness and a spectator-friendly test of fitness. And I think there's always going to be compromises that need to be made with that.
All right, so we all got back from Knoxville, Tennessee. Y'all had a good time?
Is that your natural voice?
Yeah, that's my natural voice. You know, it's funny, when I moved to California, people were like, wow, you're Southern. I was like, you haven't met my friend Ricky who talked like this.
Can you talk like that the whole podcast?
I certainly can. Yeah, so good times. Me and Adam went down in the we took a car together, and we were listening to a whole bunch of country on the way, so we were properly primed.
I tried my best. You kept trying to change it, I feel like.
A couple times.
But he's like, have you ever heard this song that is different from a different genre and band that you've probably never heard? Let's try this one.
Hold on. Let's tell them the bands, though. It was Hootie and the Blowfish and Blues Traveler. So we didn't get too far off the beaten path.
No, we did. There was the AI-generated channel.
Okay, yeah. I did show him. There's a Crazy Train cover that's in yacht rock form that's fucking great.
It's probably going to be the background
anyway,
music for
Syndicate, Perrin, good times?
That was great, yeah.
You had a hell of a weekend there.
Yeah, it was I wouldn't say it was a roller coaster. It was definitely an interesting start, but overall, obviously a great weekend for Lydia. I mean, she finished in 4th, so a few spots out of qualifying for the games, which I think going into it was a possibility if certain things happened based on the programming and her strengths. But like this field, I think because there were so many backfills, there was actually a lot of athletes I didn't know who they were, which is not normal for a competition of this level in the East, especially because it was just the East. So you didn't know who was going to maybe come out of the woodwork and crush certain workouts, which there were some surprises, I would say. But yeah, I mean, overall, at the end of the weekend, she was in a position where I'd say it would probably be a reach for her to make it there, but I think just getting to where she got, kind of climbed the leaderboard all weekend and finishing with a really strong event with some heavy sandbag cleans, which is something we've been working on a lot. And that was probably one of her best executions and a really proud moment just to show the progress that she's had there. But a rough start to begin. It was a rough day one, which...
just rough in comparison on the leaderboard? Or had she done the whole thing in full for a time before?
She had not, which, looking back, I take a lot of responsibility for that. I mean, there were things that just happened with timing of her training and other things that were competing with training for that specific event, just bad luck. Like a day where she was supposed to do a snatch session, her dog almost died, or she was really sick. And that happened repeatedly. I mean, we had a huge lead time on this, 2 months or something. But we were also prepping for World Fitness Project as well.
Yeah.
And the weight is a pretty high percentage of her max, so we didn't really want to overdo it, but she touched it basically weekly leading up, and then there were a few things kind of in the last 4 weeks that were a little interrupted. So she never did 30. The most she did was 20 multiple times in different ways.
Okay.
So we had a ballpark idea of probably where she would be, and she exceeded that expectation even with 2 misses, but I still think in hindsight we probably should have tried the full thing at some point, because I think the girls that did it in affiliate semifinals, a lot of them improved on their second attempt, and just having that, first go and knowing what it feels like, and then having something to base it off of. But also, if she did that in training, I think it's a little different experience of pressure.
So different.
Yeah.
Yeah, it's so different. Yeah. It's weird because Heavy Isabel's been out for how long now?
A long time.
JR's, apparently was one of the first ones to come up with the idea of it, and then it kind of caught on. It went to Mayhem Classic, and then went to in-affiliate, and pretty much every other semifinal that they programmed for was using it. So it's been around for a long time, but it's also one of those things, like you say, if it's so close to your max, you have to be really careful with how often you touch it, how often you're putting it in. You don't want their confidence to get completely broken with a couple of bad sessions there, because it can go downhill quick.
Yeah. But
on that note, though, we have Coach Ryan over here, and you had your athlete, Bree. She was on site doing the in-affiliate online semifinals, and she, if I remember correctly, didn't finish it, but here at competition, she did, right?
Yeah. So she only got 21 reps at the in-affiliate semifinal. So to your point about testing it and then coming back and retesting, we went and ran some progressions similar to what Adam said. She's very close to her 1RM. So we kept the progressions kind of conservative and created a timing mechanism in her head. So she just got used to lifting on the clock that she was going to need to do on the floor. And then went out and finished in 9:30, which didn't really reflect the leaderboard doesn't show a huge number, but for us, that was a massive win.
Yeah.
So
Absolutely.
What, 33% improvement if she got 20 in the old time cap?
Yeah, I mean, 21 in a 10-minute time cap
to hit 9 more reps.
Yeah, with transitions.
That's
with
crazy.
Transitions, yeah. And still had 3 misses.
Wow.
So
that's huge.
That's huge.
And you were out there giving her the countdown. You were holding you were doing the baseball hand signals.
Doing
out
the
there.
baseball hand signals. Yep, it's ingrained in me. But yeah, one of the big things that she has is going out a little bit too hot. So we decided that she was going to look at me between every rep and I would give her a 10-second countdown. I knew that was only going to be a 6-second countdown, so I waited a little bit longer than the agreed upon timeline just to make sure that she stayed conservative enough. And then we just kind of removed those parameters for the last 5 or 6 reps and just let her race.
Just go by feel there.
Yeah.
Nice. It's interesting because I feel like sometimes it doesn't really matter the exact timing in a setup like that. It's just having something external to sort of pull the athlete out of their own head. Like if she's just going when you say to go, it could be 10, it could be 8, it could be 6. But just her aspect of focusing on you and her cues and sort of like removing all the environmental stuff or having to put her inside of her own head and think about when she's ready. It's just something that's really, really powerful. I remember it was a quarterfinal workout that had those heavy clean and jerks, and just seeing everybody that had a coach there talking to them and counting them down and telling them when to go. Their focus was just so right there in the moment, and their performance improved rather than just kind of going by feel, where a 6-second rest break all of a sudden turns into 12, but they don't really realize that in their head.
For sure.
Yeah.
And we've all coached rookies on the floor, and this was her first big experience, and I think that it gets even more problematic when the lights are bright and you're on that stage because there's so many nerves happening. It's a new experience. It's much easier to get sucked into that.
Yeah. So she got a huge PR on Isabel. I mean, was she able to still enjoy that even though the comparison probably wasn't great on the leaderboard?
Oh, she was pumped.
That's awesome. I mean, for a rookie experience to be able to start with that big of a PR, that's huge.
Yeah.
Nice.
Great way to start the weekend.
Nice.
That's awesome.
No, I think I remember on the car ride to Knoxville, I was asking Adam, could Lydia do this? And I think if I remember correctly, you said that it's all going to depend on Isabel.
Yeah, well, it's kind of similar to what Perrin said in terms of the amount of backfills that came into Syndicate, specifically on the women's side. You don't know who you're going to get there. You don't know what kind of athletes are going to come. As you go further and further down the leaderboard, what's going to end up happening is the athletes, in my opinion, become a little bit less well-rounded, but they still have home run power. So the home run power could either be strength with a barbell, it could be gymnastics, it could be aerobic capacity, but they're probably going to be a little bit more skewed in terms of what they're good at. So the nature of the backfills, they could have been, maybe 5 to 6 of them had huge strengths on the barbell and they're going to knock her further down, or they're over here on the gymnastics aerobic side and they're going to be similar to her on the barbell. So you never know what those backfills are going to look like. So coming in, it's easy for us that know Lydia to say Isabel's probably going to be the score where it's damage control on the leaderboard, but what that damage control looks like is impossible to know when the athletes are kind of unknowns at the same time.
Is that how you felt going into it?
Yeah, and we talked about that too. I mean, you don't want to have an inflated perception of what you're capable of. So we had very realistic expectations, and we actually tried the interval work in training. I had her do EMOMs of 3 reps on the minute, 4 reps on the minute, 5 on the minute, in different variations, so she could kind of feel how much rest she needed. Another thing that's tough when your 1RM is lower relative to the weight is she has to squat snatch all of them, full ass to grass. So the rep speed is so much slower. Mm-hmm. So even if I wanted her to go every 10 seconds, the rep itself might take 4 seconds. Yeah. That's not much rest versus girls that can power. So it was just a disadvantage in a few ways, but she actually went out hotter than I thought she was going to, and she said, which is something that she's been doing more, and I think it's a very good thing for her development because it's kind of the opposite of what she normally does, especially on an event she's not as confident on. And so the first half was probably a little bit faster maybe than what she should have done in hindsight, it's difficult to say, because even her misses, the one was just kind of a very weird thing where she just missed it out front, lost focus. And the last one, which I was actually very proud of, she was racing a girl at the end. They were both on their last rep, and she just went for it a little bit, probably 2 seconds sooner than she should have, because she wanted to see if she can do it. It didn't really impact her placement too much. I mean, it would have been 3 more points or whatever, or 2 points. But I was really proud of her for doing that, and it was a gutsy move, and I think she needs a little bit more of that just in competition experience. So, I mean, I think she was like 740 something. Her goal was sub 8, and she had 2 misses in there. So, I mean, I told her, I said, I think we should maybe try it again and keep these progressions going and see if we can get that under 7 and down to 6, because her weakness relative to the field in the sport is like exactly that type of workout. And it's not that her execution wasn't great relative to her ability right now, but it just knocks her down on the leaderboard so much that it's hard to come back.
Where did that put her?
It was like 29th. Yeah. So, yeah, I mean, it hurt her a good amount. I mean, it's better than last. But it wasn't actually that event that I think kind of took her out of the race for the games. It was the event 2, which was
hold on, let's pause on that thought.
Okay.
Let's hold it on Isabel real quick. So Adam had mentioned that JR had announced this, and then everybody kind of added it to their programming. But hypothetically speaking, this was the first one where it was announced.
I don't know if it was announced publicly before then. I know that in his behind the scenes sort of stuff that he's been putting together, he had the idea for Heavy Isabel before like Mayhem announced it in their stuff.
Oh, okay.
Yeah.
Gotcha. Well, where I was going with that is we put a questionnaire out on Instagram, like what questions do you have? And the biggest one we got, which was most of them, was what was your views on the overall programming? People wanted to know how you felt like this programming stacked up. Was it a good test of fitness? Things like that. Where'd y'all come out on the other side for that?
I really like the test of fitness. I think from a spectator standpoint, there might have been something a little bit lacking, especially on the hundreds workout and then the run yoke workout, where the athletes aren't even in the facility for 95% of the workout. But there were some really good races even on those workouts and some really fun things to watch. I think it's just a matter of how into the sport you are and your patience with those types of workouts.
Yeah, I know that Chris maybe didn't complain, but said a couple of times watching the same long workout like that a couple of times is very exhausting. Not this Chris, just a different Chris that I was talking to.
Yeah.
But
I'm a big fan of watching paint dry. So
yeah, it's just interesting. It's interesting because like of all the people that probably aren't in the TTT ecosystem, like I have a ton of respect for JR and how he approaches his programming. And the challenge for any event organizer or programmer like that is trying to find a balance between a good test of fitness and a spectator-friendly test of fitness. And I think there's always going to be compromises that need to be made with that. Like the 100-style workout, I feel like being able to go that kind of rep range, that kind of time domain, the mix of movements inside of there, I do feel like we have to test that. I feel like we have to test that inside of fitness because it is not only a physical test, it's also a very mental test. And I don't think that you can say who is the fittest in this pool of athletes without having something that looks like that. I don't know how to make something like that more spectator friendly at the same time though. Like I feel like that's just one of those things that we kind of just need to compromise on. And then the running thing is interesting to me because it is like they go out, the camera can follow them, but the people inside of the venue, they have no idea what's happening out there. And there was some moves that happened out on the run that would have been cool for like everybody to kind of see and be aware of. But the alternative to that is like, if you use an assault runner, you still don't know because they're just somebody could be going faster than this person right here, and we know that we can't leak assault runner monitors together, so it's like you kind of pick your poison in some sense. So it's interesting to me to think about how we can try and blend those guys a little bit more together. The one cool thing that I saw over the course of the weekend was actually over at Rebel. So they did triple three-ish, where they started with the run, they came in for double unders, and then they all got on the rower for a 3K row. But they did link the row monitors together. So that meant that not only on the stream, but also the athletes on their separate ergs knew where everybody was at. So
that's awesome.
Yeah, I thought
was that the rogue ones or C2?
C2 ones. And I think that just like
why haven't we done this?
Knowing that C2 has that functionality built in because they're meant for ergathlons where you've got 30 people in a heat doing the same race, and like you want to either project it up or like have people see on the screens where they're at with respect to their competitors. Like I feel like we should just take advantage of that more often. So maybe that's something, but it's probably more of like a technological thing, like having the assault runners be able to do that, having the ability to be able to project that. So I was thinking about that too, is trying to make sure that the test can maybe try and be a little bit more balanced to spectator friendly, watching progress, seeing where the races are playing out instead of just waiting an extra 90 seconds to see who comes back in the lead.
Yeah. The games has done that before, I think, for one of either the half marathon or the marathon.
Yeah, they definitely did it for the long row. Yeah.
And then I think Wadapalooza did it one year, the boat race.
Yep.
I forget the exact event.
Oh, because there was the pace boat?
Yes, the pace boat. Yes.
We should just always do it.
Yeah. No, I agree.
I'm going to try and do it at the camp. I was playing around with some of the wires.
We'll see if they'll do it this year with the first event, or it might be outside.
I hope that they do it on the Hudson River.
Yeah. Yeah. They did have I don't know if it was a drone or some camera set up outside to see the run, but apparently didn't go up till like the very end of heat 2. But they did say it was on the screen inside the venue. So, I mean, it might just, you don't know who's running, but it was, people running outside. I mean, I always think watching people run on a track is the most entertaining way to watch a running race, but it's just logistically not always possible.
Yeah. So the programming in general, I feel like the tests, looking at the battery of tests, I do think that he did a really good job of finding a balance, making sure that the best got their way through. There was probably like one or two things in there that I would nitpick a little bit in terms of time caps and making sure that the work done is trying to equate across the whole field. And I know that he said this before in terms of like he's very aware of the time caps and trying to make sure that everybody is doing the same work. So somebody that like, doesn't get as far in an AMRAP doesn't have an advantage later on. I don't know if it played out totally how he thought it was going to. So for instance, the run, there might have been like, I want to say like 8 to 10 girls that got capped on that one. And I don't know what the tie break was because I wasn't at the individual briefing, but I don't know how tie breaks work when you're out on a run. So if everybody got time capped after they went out, I don't know what they said to you guys, if it was like when you went out or when you came back in or where you were on the run.
I think it was the end of the 7th round.
Was the tie break time? Yeah. So something like that, I feel like if I knew that, I could just sprint my way through that 7th round if I knew I wasn't going to finish, and then I could just stop there. So like little things like that, trying to make sure that we are either having the time caps be even buffered a little bit more so that everybody can get back in, or making it so that people can't game that style of thing. And then the other thing was, what was the 2-2-2-3? It was double unders, rope climbs.
That'll march.
Yeah, the minimum work requirement I thought maybe was a little bit too aggressive, but I understand where he's coming from. He didn't want somebody to get an advantage by only just doing less and less every time. Yeah. Yeah.
That was also my other thing where, I get it, and I don't really know how you would fix that, but I mean, there was some girls I think that did 1 round or 2, and so they just don't have to do as much work with their grip. The next day I would hope they maybe feel a little bit fresher, but I agree, it's the format with the buy-in roll together because of the structure of it being interval and somebody gaming it.
Yeah,
that's the issue.
Do you think it matters this year, given that we had a less dense field than we've had in the past, that we're actually letting these athletes who traveled all the way to Knoxville from Florida, Maine, Canada actually continue to participate in the event? Because from my vantage point, the people who weren't finishing the buy-ins were kind of in 35th to 40th place anyway.
Yeah. Yeah, I mean, he created the workouts like in November of last year. So I don't know, maybe he could have reflected on that, looking at the field when there were more backfills from in-affiliate semis, and people qualified for the games through in-affiliate semis. But yeah, I mean, it definitely was the first 2 heats were the majority of the people that got capped on that. Yeah. I don't know, were there a lot of men?
I don't think any men got capped, if I remember right.
Okay.
On the Kill Taylor, Austin Hatfield got capped, which was actually pretty surprising. But it just goes to show like how costly it could be to get something wrong on the buy-in part of it. But little things like that, I like to think about the scoring system and trying to make sure that you are reflecting the work being done and rewarding the buy-in as its own thing instead of just saying a minimum work requirement. Like try and come up with a way that the scoring system can say these rope climbs are worth this much compared to these lunge lengths. And then after that, the score is just the total amount of work that you did. So you're still rewarding somebody who got deep or finished in 3 rounds like Lydia did, but you're also being able to draw a line and not necessarily have people completely pulled out of that event from one time through because they couldn't make it through. They can keep trying and see how far they can go.
So like as the rounds go on, the reps are worth more. Like a rope climb in a round of 3 is actually worth something.
Yeah, I would just try and come up with a way to have those worked into the scoring system so that is reflected on their score at the end, and they can keep going through the same stress that the other athletes are going through.
Yeah.
I mean, I think in hindsight, I don't remember the exact rules around the scoring, but there were probably 2 or 3 women in the 3rd heat that would have been better off just sprinting 1 round or 2 rounds, just killing it on the lunges and then just taking the time cap.
Like knowing they were going to blow up.
Yeah. Because by the 4th round, they were barely finishing the buy-in. You have 20 seconds to get lunges. At that point, by the time you get to the kettlebells, you've got 12 seconds maybe.
Yeah.
Well, okay. So also, if you strategically take off round 3, which is a 2-minute interval, to save it for round 4, which is a 3-minute interval, because you're blown up, and that's a strategy that you use to try to finish the workout, as much of the workout or the workout, is that also a bad thing?
So what would happen is if they could figure out a way to put the buy-in into the scoring system, that person is costing themselves also the buy-in reps. So picture 50 or 40 double unders, whatever it was, and then 4 or 3 rope climbs. They're down that amount of reps as well. Now, they're still probably going to get farther in the 4th round than they would have if they did 3 and 4, but they cost themselves all of that stuff. So instead of just saying it's just the lunge distance, if it's the total accumulation of buy-in plus lunge distance, now you're making that person make a harder choice.
Yeah. But it's better for them instead of not being able to do 2 rounds. It's better to not have the buy-in from that 1 round and actually be able to participate in the last one. I feel like it's similar scenario to the ruck ring muscle up event a few years ago with the pistols and the burpee box jump overs, where the
longest brief of my life.
The reps would be 0. Like people's score would be 0. Yeah. They'd be tied at 0 because there was no they didn't reward them for the buy-in. Yeah. I guess I didn't speak on the programming overall. I mean, I feel like I am biased and I like JR's programming just because I've had athletes do his competitions for the past few years, and I've listened to him talk about his thought process around why he made certain decisions. He has also admitted he has some biases as well in his programming.
We all do.
And to his credit, during the what I called the paint dry workouts, he even said these aren't going to be the most fun to watch. It's not like he's thinking they're awesome.
I mean, there were some that were boring, but there were some that were really fun to watch. Yeah. So I don't know. Is it better to have all of them mediocrely fun?
I don't know. I don't think you can knock them all out of the park from a spectator perspective. Yeah. And so if you just know that going in and be like, all right, I'm going to have at least 3, especially final day, trying to be as exciting as possible. But the others, I've just got to test their fitness, and it might be boring. I'm okay with it.
Yeah, sure.
But also some of that's not even just the workout. It's the fact that you're having to watch 4 heats do, it's like, oh God, here we go.
True. I would say if I had to be picky, maybe the only thing maybe missing would be pressing. I mean, they did a lot of handstand walking, but I don't know if there was anything else that was pressing.
Yeah, this is the year that handstand push-ups kind of went away, huh? As a semifinal overall.
Except for the Far East throwdown.
Far East, yeah. Well, I mean, they were at Rebel and they were at Torian.
Oh, I meant Rebel. Yeah. Rebel. Yeah.
We won't talk about those.
Yeah. It's too soon.
It's too soon.
No, we'll talk about it. Let's answer the question real quick. From your guys' perspective, would you rather a semifinal be a great test of fitness or fun to watch? From, thinking about your athletes.
Yeah, I mean, if I'm thinking just as a coach and thinking about my athletes, I'd rather it be a test of fitness because that's what I'm trying to prepare them for. You also have to build into their preparation what it is that you think they're going to be tested on, which part of that could be who is it that's programming it. If we know it's JR that's programming it, we also know that he has a historical bias on certain things. He has a certain way that he likes to test strength. He likes to try different things in a competitive setting, like the cut ropes that haven't been done in a super long time. So it's important for coaches to understand that you might have a preference about what you want to be tested, but you have to prepare the athlete for what you think is going to be tested. And it might not be the sexiest thing in the world, but I think that if I'm trying to pick, I'd probably pick something that is a little bit more boring at the end of the day, but is a more well-rounded test.
Yeah, as a coach, I'm 100% on board with I want it to be a test of fitness. But I will say, like, the year that I went to the games as a spectator when the gym owner back at CrossFit NOLA qualified, it's a lot more fun as a fan of the sport to watch the fun, spectator-friendly events. So I think from a growth of the sport standpoint, you kind of need to make sure that you're blending them, and I would almost prefer to err on the side of making it spectator-friendly to get eyes on the sport and to get people excited about the sport.
Yeah, I think the pushback that I'd have on that, and it's not even really pushback, it's basically just me trying to argue with you for the sake of arguing. I think that the eyes on the sport probably don't happen live. I think new eyes on the sport probably happen after the fact. So we're not making somebody sit through 4 heats of a hundreds workout, like especially if they're new to the sport. What we probably are showing them is we're showing them the highlights afterwards, the scores that these athletes are achieving in something like a marathon row or 333-ish. And then that is then going to pique their curiosity to then pull them into the sport. Whereas now they might see like more of the back and forth and more of the heats and stuff. So from drawing new eyes in, I don't think that that stuff is necessarily pushing people away. I don't see one person like walking into that venue and saying, sitting through that hundreds workout and be like, nope, never mind, this isn't for me. But
no, I'm with you on that. I think you're spot on there.
Yeah, I mean, I agree. I think the test of fitness is more important, but I think that they also think about it being spectator friendly. You know, there has to be a concession. It can't be extremely boring.
No, there were some good ones in there for sure.
Yeah, it's even the little details. It's like it's transitions. It's showing forward momentum, and I think on that yoke repeater workout, he probably wanted there to be more tight races because the games workout, the original one, there was very close races, but they just had a really big field.
It was hard the way that they did the floor on that one. I think if he had full access to the floor, we would have been able to see better about who was winning on that.
Absolutely.
As it was going, like I kind of knew like who the good runners were and who I was watching, and that was really the only way that I knew like where the races were. But like if I didn't see the first 3 rounds and I came in, I would have a hard time saying who was in the lead, 100%. Which is just hard in that simple. I know that they had the little flip numbers to let you know which round they were on, but I was sitting in the wrong spot and I came into one of the guys' heats like I have no idea what's going on right now. I don't know who's winning.
Yeah,
you have to be really dialed into that event to watch the moves made.
Yeah.
Like there was one spectacular move by Sterner. I don't know if you saw that on the men's heat. It was fantastic. And
talk us through it.
So he's sitting, I think it was on Ty Jenkins. He's just sitting on him for the first 4 or 5 rounds. And then all of a sudden they come in, like they go out, Ty Jenkins is out like maybe 10 meters ahead. They come in, Sterner just cruises past him on that last turn, cuts him off, gets into the yoke, finishes the yoke, hustles out, beats him out of the lane, turns on the jets immediately to create space.
Yeah.
And you just see Jenkins just break just a little bit, enough to create the space.
That's
and
so
you're like,
satisfying.
This workout's over.
Break
It's
the elastic.
over.
You know, the other really cool race was actually Kira. Kira was racing with, it was Erica Folo and Caroline Stanley, I think. Do you remember?
I'm not sure.
It might not have been Lydia's heat.
It wasn't. It was
because she was still working her
correct,
way up.
yeah.
So Kira was right with them the whole time. She was in the last heat. I think Brooke was out in front, and then the girl that did really good, I think her last name was Wade. She was way out in front of all of them.
Miley.
So it was Miley, Wade, Brooke Wells, and then 3 girls. And so it was Kira with Caroline Stanley and Erica Folo, and their lanes were all right together. And they would come in from the runs together. They'd run to their yokes. They'd run out shoulder by shoulder, kind of like elbowing each other as they go out. And it went like that for like 4 or 5 rounds. And then on like the 5th round, I want to say, they were heading out of the venue. And I saw Kira just book it down the straightaway before they went out the door. And in my head, I'm thinking, no, too early. And then they came back in and Kira was behind them again. And I was like, oh, I hope that she didn't burn out. But I think in her head, and I talked to her afterwards, she was like, oh yeah, I do need to wait on this. Like I need to wait and trust myself that I'll have that kick when it finishes. So she kind of did that just by instinct, and then she pulled back. And then on the very last round, when they're out on the run where we couldn't see them, she did that same thing, but she did that. She broke the elastic. There was the turnaround around the barriers, and she took that quicker than them and just hit the afterburners. And she was like, I wanted to make sure that they knew that I was going to sprint the whole way and that they didn't have a chance of catching me. Nice. And she came in and made that turn and finished. It was awesome. That was just Kira being gritty and like picking her spot really, really well about when to separate there.
She was fun to watch this week.
She did awesome.
Yeah, she did awesome.
Wait, I want to make a comment about the George Sterner thing because I just happened to be we were like getting our stuff in the back after the men finished, and he was talking to Ty, or he was maybe Connor Volts or so, yeah. And they were talking about it, and he said, and if he's listening to this, correct me if I'm wrong, but I think he miscounted, and he thought it was one round. He thought he was going to finish, and so that was his kick. And then he came in and realized he had another round, but it ended up giving him the win, like because he sustained it. Yeah, but yeah, it was an accident, I think.
He didn't learn from Lex.
Yeah, from Alexis. Yeah, Lydia did say after that workout, she's like, I think I overpaced it because I could have done 2 more rounds, but I actually broke down her splits, and like she didn't negative split necessarily, which is what the intention would be. So I do feel like she ran pretty close to probably what she needed to, with the exception of probably 1 round was about.
I did have a question for you on that. Do you feel like her not being in the final heat, that event cost her a couple of placements?
What event was this? What number?
This was event 3. It was the first workout on day 2.
Yeah, so it was Isabel and then hundreds and then the yoke repeater.
The issue was, so looking at who finished high, there were 2 girls in the first heat, which I remember I was asking her dad, I was like, what are the top times? And he's like 15:30 something. I was like, what? And that was, I think, Rachel Klausing. And there was another girl that was in the 40s or 50s too. And the other top finishers, I think, were Miley Wade, which they were like seconds apart. So maybe if she was with Miley, racing Miley, that would have helped her. But yeah, it was not great to start in heat 2. So it was the second heat of the day out of 4. And we talked about like, hey, you are racing the clock. You are not racing these girls. You have to stay on your own pace. But at the same time, it was kind of difficult to know because there were so many turns, like especially in the beginning, like 90-degree turns. And we did that a little bit in the warm-up, but it's very hard to accelerate. And I think with that stimulus too, like her yoke was great. She was 7 to 8 seconds per round, which is pretty fast. She actually made up a lot of time, I think, on some other girls. But I think when you get tired, it's very difficult to tell your brain, I don't need to slow down and I can sustain my speed on that, because she did know, like, if I get really tired on the yoke and that's 2 to 3 seconds slower per round, like that adds up very quickly. And to make up 5 seconds on a 400-meter run versus lose 5 seconds on a yoke, I don't really know I feel like running 5 seconds faster could be a little bit costly. But we tried to basically pace the first 5 and kick at 6. And that is mostly what she did. The 6th round was actually her slowest one. So, yeah, I mean, it just kind of was what it was.
It's interesting the way that the times play out over the course of it, like as the heats progress, because usually what you'll see is what Ryan's talking about is like the last heat where the big dogs is usually going to be the fast one. But I think honestly for the girls, I have to think my way through this. I think 4 of the 6 events, the event winner was not in the final heat, which I think also might speak to the backfills. Like, I don't know if it was home run power or else, but Reese won 4 and 5, right? And then Rachel Klausing won the other one. Rebecca Devine won Isabel. I don't know if it was just the nature of the girls' field, because I don't think the guys was that way. I know Spencer Panchek won like 3 of the last. I think he won the last 3, right?
Yeah.
Yeah.
Very
I don't know
impressive.
if he was in the last heat, but usually what you count on, all right, if I can be in that last heat, it's such a huge advantage because then I have all of that information. Not only do I have the times, like if I have a coach or a fan that's watching the prior heats, but I also can probably like watch the stream and see what they're doing and see where they're making up their times. It's usually just such a huge advantage. But I was really caught off guard by how many of the event winners weren't in the final heat in this one.
Do athletes watch the stream in the back if they're in the final heat?
Absolutely.
Yeah.
Whenever I have internet in the back, I've always
You're
got that
watching it,
pulled up.
but are the athletes watching it?
Yeah. Well, I'll have them watch it too, especially if there's things that I want them seeing. So like with the team, for example, like how they were doing their synchro burpee box jump overs and doing like this weed pattern, I was trying to talk them through it and I was getting like blank faces. And so I was like, all right, just hang on a second. I pulled up the stream. I was like, just do this. And then they're like, oh yeah, okay.
Yeah. I mean, this can go both ways. You telling them a time to beat, it can motivate them to go faster, like, oh, wow, that's 90 seconds off of my testing time, or it can discourage them. So I think it also just depends on the athlete. Some people don't want to see what other people are doing. They just kind of want to be in their own space. But I actually did that for one event with her right as she was in a corral, because there was the GHD handstand walk one. I was a little afraid she was going to take her GHDs a little too slow. And I just showed her a really short clip of Elsie Larson, like sprinting her GHDs. I said, after the first set of 30, I would try to go this fast.
She did?
Yes, 100%. Yeah.
The only unfortunate thing about that workout was the box jumps for her, right? Otherwise, she would have been right up there with.
Yeah, she failed too.
So Chris was asking me this, and I wasn't sure because I didn't see totally. First I saw Erica try and take her out, which
that was crazy.
Erica tried to take her out with her head.
Lydia
I think she talked about it. It's fine.
Yeah, no, they're good. They,
Lydia
they
did
laughed about it
so
afterwards.
I don't say that to
What'd she
demean
do?
Erica.
She did the Allen Iverson step up. Excuse me.
Lydia was completely unfazed. Like basically just stepped over and did the box jump. But how did she fail? Did she put her hand down or something?
Yeah, her hand or her knee, and it was like
Down where? Like on top of the box?
She was on top of the box. So she didn't fall off the box. She was on the box and either her hand or her knee went down. She was just too close. I mean, it was a 36-inch box.
Sorry, one more question. Hand or knee went down on the box
on
or
the
on
top
her
of the
knee?
box. So you can't touch the box at all. Anything.
Just feet.
Just feet.
Yeah, just feet.
So she had to redo the rep, and I think that happened twice.
Dude, I want to picture the alternate universe where that didn't happen, and her and Reese would have just literally been doing
right
this
there.
down the floor the whole
And
time.
she, on one of the handstands, she went up the stairs, down the stairs,
Paused. Yeah.
back up the stairs.
She's just showing off.
I know. Yeah. But that was my favorite race of the weekend, because I'm also heavily invested in both of those girls being successful, and they're just amazing young athletes and competitors, and they're both so good at handstand walking. Like, we knew I was like, you're racing Reese in this.
Yeah.
I mean, I knew there was potential for other people to come out of the woodwork, but it was unfortunate they weren't like next to each other. Because it's kind of hard sometimes to look all the way over the field. I think she was in like 2 and 8, but they definitely saw each other, and they definitely used each other to go fast.
Lydia was actually as short as that little girl is and as tall as that box is. She was making up time on the box jumps, which was really, really impressive.
Yeah, she was not expecting to fail box jumps. That was like probably the only thing, like almost to a detriment, like a little bit too confident in, but
maybe just aggressive.
Yeah.
It wasn't even like a fail. It was like a bobble.
It was aggressive would be a good way to.
I remember watching Bree do that, and it's interesting to think about like being side by side, because I thought that Bree did a really, really good job with that event, but she was like next. I think was her name Elsie Larson.
Yes,
the girl, she was right next to her.
Yeah,
and then Nina was in like the other lane, and so it kind of like. It's always a challenge when you get out on the semifinal floor for the first time to make sure that you are celebrating your wins and you're staying in your lane. But when you're having a really good workout and they are just smoking that workout at the same time, like I don't know if that's like something that played into her approach or mindset during.
So we went into that workout knowing that she had never touched the ramp or stairs until 2 weeks prior to the event. So we had gotten her to a point where she could actually go 1 foot or one hand on each stair in practice. And then we get into the warm-up area and it was like, it's not here today. So we audibled in the back, said we're just going to play it a little bit safer because it's only 3 to 5 seconds tops per rep. And we just need to make sure that each attempt counts, or as much as possible. We had a few fails in there. But I think that for her, she was able to keep that perspective and not get too demoralized by having 2 of the top 8 scores directly next to her.
It was those
Top
2
5.
and then those 2, I think. It was basically like they were within like 8 seconds of each other. It was crazy.
Yeah. And I'm watching it like as a coach, and I'm sitting here like my eyes are like going wide. I'm like, what is going on? Are all the heats doing this?
Those 4 girls are so impressive.
Yeah.
Elsie Larson, Nina in that heat, and then Lydia and Reese in the other heat. They were just sprinting the whole time. It was just like a 7-minute sprint.
Yeah, and so I'm watching the rest of the field, and I see all these other girls going, and I'm like, we're behind 9 out of 10. Like, we're behind all 9 other athletes, and then...
But not because Bree's doing anything wrong.
Yeah, but then you look up and you realize that, nope, it's just these 2 going faster. She beat 6 of the people in the heat.
She did awesome.
Yeah.
I remember telling you before, it was almost like her handstands were too pretty.
Well, that's the gymnastics background, and like Reese and Lydia are able to manipulate their bodies a little bit more, but I think some of that also comes from the exposure to the implement.
Yeah, for sure.
Absolutely.
Like you understand that a pretty handstand walk, it kind of has to go out the window when you put that obstacle in there, just based off of the center of mass shift that has to happen.
Yeah, it's a completely novel position for a former gymnast, right? Like
Yeah.
you're doing the exact opposite of what they've told you to do.
What's
for
been
the
ingrained
first
in
12
you.
years of your life.
I have a funny story about, we're jumping around a little bit, but before that workout, we're warming up and they did a Kill Taylor with like Haley and Austin Hatfield and for that before the first heat. And I was like, hey, let's just, to our discussion earlier, like, let's watch this and see what happens. And we were watching it and Lydia was like, oh my God, I've done this entire workout wrong in practice. She thought it was GHD, handstand ramp, GHD, handstand ramp, GHD, handstand ramp, and then all of the box jump over stairs. So she practiced it like 3 times that way. And because I remember her telling me, she's like, man, my core was so smoked for those box jumps. And so when if she was like, I swear, if I didn't see this, she would have run to the GHD after the handstand ramp in the first round. So thank goodness we watched that. I was like, honey, we went through a brief.
I was going to say, this is after the brief, Lydia.
Yeah. I mean, to be fair, I don't think they walked through the whole flow. They just kind of went over the movements. But I understand how she interpreted it and why, but
no,
it was
don't justify it. No.
We were just laughing about it.
They did do the flow though. Do you think that it would be valuable for the athletes to actually have a demo team do the workout and send them a video so that you can just see the
send them the video before
the full flow, but not just like an athlete walking on their hands and just kind of putting their arms overhead and pretending like they're walking on their hands, but actually see the thing.
Yeah, they used to do this. I have all the videos. There was like 1 or 2 regional years. They had the whole video of someone do the workout and they sent it to the athletes, and I think that was it.
Let's get back to that.
Yeah, it makes a huge difference for people to be able to understand all the transitions and the rules and the standards. But so it was a little bit of a oh crap moment, but it didn't really matter that much because I think it also in her mind she was like, oh, this is gonna be way easier than what she did.
That's true.
Yeah.
Lydia, come on.
That's why
that's
probably why she failed some box jumps. She was way too confident.
Why am I here already?
Yeah, this is going to be so easy.
Well, let's wrap up Lydia's story here. So we know that she came in, she did Isabel, didn't go great.
Yeah.
And then kind of where was her head at, being in that bottom heats, and then because she had a crazy rise back all the way up to almost third. She ended up fourth.
Yeah.
Like, how was that for you guys?
She was really proud of Isabel, and as she should have been, because she met her expectations. She executed really well. Sometimes in the past, some of the heavier events, like even the snatch ladder last year, the regional snatch ladder, she was really proud of, even though she was, the last girl on the floor. And some people, I think, can get a little embarrassed of like everyone cheering you on when you're the last person, but I think she handled it well and actually ended up being a very memorable experience for her. So I think if you can embrace like being comfortable and confident with where you are and your performance showing progress for yourself, I think that's a very mature perspective. But going into the second event, that was another one we anticipated going really well because historically she's done very well with a similar hundreds workout that JR program at Crash a few years ago. She made a very bad nutrition error in between events and
between which two?
The Isabel and the chipper, and she had like a protein shake like with way too much fat in it, and so she was feeling. I didn't know this until after the fact, but she was feeling a little queasy in the warm-ups. And then the workout started, the bike went really well to plan, and then in the toes of the bar, she started feeling super nauseous. And so for the entire workout, she just said she was like trying to hold back her vomit and like almost stopped to throw up in the burpees. Yeah. So the plan was, we talked about this ad nauseum because I was kind of trying to convince her to change her plan. She wanted to jump the burpees. I said, just step them maybe. But she felt really confident because she practiced it. And she was like, I saved so much more time and I think I'm going to be tired for the front squat. So I'm just going to have to gut them out anyway. So I was like, hey, I trust you. First burpee, she stepped, and I was like, that's interesting. She must be like way more blown up than I thought. And then like stepped all but maybe 3. And so in hindsight, she said every time she jumped, it would like really push it up. Yeah. So she just had to kind of manage it. And it still was
What did she put in the shake?
It was peanut butter.
Oh.
Yeah. It was,
We
yeah,
can forgive
maybe
you for
I don't know if
paying
I'm
the money.
outing her. Yeah, it was a shake. It wasn't a shake she's not had before, but she usually has it before work shift.
Yeah.
And so you don't need to exercise. Like, it was the worst workout to do it on. Probably the only one that actually was.
You don't want a brick of fat sit in your stomach when you're doing 100 burpees.
Yeah. So she's never going to make that mistake again. And she's like pretty fired up about it. And she said she might actually redo the workout, film the whole thing and post it just to like prove to herself that she would have done way better.
Yeah.
But
So what was her finished placement?
she
on
finished 14th. And I mean, I did do the math at the end of the weekend, which there's a domino effect. So who knows?
Sure.
But if she would have finished third or higher, she would have qualified for the games.
And then what was the time difference between 3rd and 14th?
Maybe 90 seconds to 2 minutes.
Peanut butter.
Our goal time was around what Erica did it in. And
Okay.
Erica was significantly faster than Brooke, maybe like about a minute or so. So I think it was possible. I'm pretty confident, but you just also don't know.
We'll look for the video, Lydia.
Yeah. Yeah, no,
So
just to do
when
it.
you get towards the the last day, and
Yeah.
what are y'all talking? Are y'all thinking, oh crap, we could podium?
No, we didn't really explicitly talk about that. I mean, the point gap at even going into workout 5 was still significant, but she made a giant leap. I think from day 1 to day 2, she went from like deep in the 20s to like 7th, maybe. So yeah, I mean, the whole theme this weekend was, it sounds cliche, but it was really just execute to the best of her ability, because her last competition, she felt like she didn't do that and just wanted to be happy and satisfied with showing what she's capable of. And so I think she absolutely achieved that. And I was like, listen, you have nothing to lose. Like, you're in the hunt. Anything can happen. And I think, was the handstand one workout 1 on Sunday? Yeah. So even before that happened, like, she knew it was going to be a strong workout, but she wouldn't go into it saying, I'm going to try to win this. She went into it with the same mindset as all the previous events. And I think that served her really well throughout the whole weekend, just to have a very positive mindset and focus on executing to the best of her ability. And before the last event, the bag 9, the sandbag clean 1, we honestly weren't really sure what was going to happen, but we knew it was the type of event that anything can happen.
Absolutely.
And so, yeah, I mean, she sent that workout, and even I think had at least one fail on the sandbag and finished 8th in a workout with 18 sandbag cleans at 150. So I think that was actually a workout. It was really valuable to be in the last heat. I don't know if she would have been able to replicate that in another one. Maybe the previous heat with Erica and some heavy hitters there. But yeah, she was pretty fired up, and she was, I think, one of the last ones even off the bar muscle ups. And so made up a ton of time on the last 9 sandbags, which I think is a testament to her pacing and knowing herself. Yeah, so it was just awesome. And I think there's definitely a lot of like, what ifs,
For sure.
But I think that's just going to motivate her for the future. So
Yeah. One of the things I always like to frame for my athletes when they have those what ifs is that you have to keep in mind that there's 40 other athletes in the field, and every single one of them has those same what ifs.
yes.
So, we want to understand that the ceiling is higher than maybe we were able to express, but we also need to make sure that it comes down to executing, and we have to reflect upon how to maximize that. Just because, we had that conversation with Bree after the weekend where it's like, what if we had executed on events 3 and 4? Where could we have finished? Like, maybe top 10, maybe, but at the end of the day, that's not what happened, and we just need to figure out how to fix the issues that we had with the way that we went about pacing workouts and executing and the skills.
Yeah, it's a slightly different take on the same kind of analysis, right? Like, instead of saying what if, it's what could we have done better or differently to make sure that we're trying to get as close to that ceiling as we can next time. Because like you said, like, very rarely is somebody going to walk away from a competition saying that was absolutely everything I had on every single event. I couldn't have done anything better. So the goal is always sit back, think about analytically, what was it individually that maybe you could have cleaned up execution-wise? Long-term, what is it that you need to train with respect to your peer group to make sure that you are closing the gap there? But it can be too easy for an athlete who's looking at the leaderboard to say, oh man, 5 more seconds here and that's 3 spots. Like, falling into that trap, I feel like, is almost taken away from the more useful analysis of, all right, this is where we were at, this is how we executed, how can we improve on this next time?
Yeah.
What's in your control versus outside of your control? Because there's plenty of girls that probably had a lot of mishaps this weekend.
Oh, yeah.
Either judging, bad execution, didn't feel good, whatever. And the opposite, right? So you can't, and you also can't even control the programming. I mean, they had good preparation going into it, but you swap out one gymnastics heavy workout for barbell cycling and rowing or something, you know, it could be completely different. So I think in the reason why I did do the math on a few scenarios for her was more to show her that she was capable.
That, I feel like, is where the value of it comes from, though, right?
Right.
Like, you show, like, 4th place is like, all right, yeah, you're there for sure. But now it's like, this is how really close you are, Lydia. It's like, this is going to light even more of the fire to let you know, like, this isn't something that's just like a far off dream now. Like, you're here, you're ready now to be able to compete with these girls.
Yeah.
Yeah.
What, Ryan, how was the weekend as a whole for you and Bree?
I think it was what you would expect from someone on the first big competition stage. Day 1 was probably like 99.5% execution. Nice. You know, we already talked about Isabel. Then she goes out and finishes 6th overall in the 100s chipper, which is a good style of workout for her. But, you know, we hit exactly what we were hoping to do. Then day 2 comes around. I am a big proponent of allowing athletes to race. So we had the discussion in the back before the run yoke event where I probably wanted her to be a little bit more conservative than she wanted to be, and I prefer to let the athlete dictate the terms of their race. So she went out aggressive and just got walked down by a few athletes in her heat, and then the next heat was a little bit faster. So that ended up being a slight underperformance compared to what she was capable of. But if we look at it from a long-term perspective and she wants to get to the level that she thinks she's capable of getting to, we have to be risk tolerant. So I like to develop that now and just maybe understand what can we learn from it. Maybe we dial it back just a little bit early and then take that risk a little bit later in the event rather than right out the gate. So that kind of was a slight underperformance. The skill, when we talked about the ramp not having access to that, she touched the cut rope for the first time ever in warm-ups. So we struggled with some of the foot clamps. There was a misunderstanding of how many lanes or how many laps she was supposed to do on the overhead lunge, and that cost a few spots on the leaderboard because she put them down and went to the chest piece thinking that she was finished.
Oh.
Not quite. But on the flip side of that, if we're taking that from a positive perspective, like, you just completed the buy-in all 4 times with a skill that you had never touched in your life. So kind of the mixed bag that you would expect. We talked about the ramps, super excited about that execution given the context. And then the sandbag clean, Bree and I started working together about a year and a half, maybe almost 2 years ago at this point. Her 1 rep max sandbag clean at the time was 150 pounds. And then she goes out there, she failed 4 reps in the first round, but not because of a lack of strength, but because she put too much force into it. It went over her shoulder, she got wobbly, couldn't stabilize. Then she did well. The ring muscle ups were something that we've identified as a weakness, and she crushed it there. She rode, came back, took a couple of very costly no reps. I think you and I talked about this in the background, but 3 no reps that I would disagree with, but at the end of the day, that's
On what?
her
Bar
feet
muscle
going
ups.
over the bar.
Bar
on
muscle
ups. Oh, okay.
Bar muscle ups. But they all happened after she had already completed 10 of the 12 reps.
Ooh.
So you took 3 reps, had to come down, take a 20-second break, get back up, finish your rep, and then she was able to hit 4 more sandbag cleans. So from a context perspective, it was fantastic. Like the improvement was so apparent. And I think we just continue to focus on how do we execute a little bit better with this subset of tests in the future or similar types of tests. And then we just have to continue to do strength progression similar to Lydia. I mean, they profile similar in some ways, and the strength progression is very much one of those things.
It just sounds like there's a lot to get excited about. Like there's a lot to get excited about for short term and long term for her, which is really cool. I mean, picking up skills that quickly, seeing the progression, like seeing the progress on some of the progressions you guys have put in place is very exciting. And just getting her out on the floor and seeing that there is like just a competitor in there. Cause like the first couple of times they're either like overwhelmed by the limelight and they don't live up to what they're capable of, or they kind of like step in and they shine. And it seemed like she really just sort of stepped forward like that.
Yeah. And also, I mean, biological 23, 24 years old, but she's only done CrossFit now. She's done 3 opens.
Yeah.
So, you talk about from a training age perspective, her first open happened 3 months into CrossFit. So there is a lot to build upon from a training adaptation standpoint.
Very
so I'm
exciting.
really excited about the next few years and watching her grow.
Yeah. On that point, talking about like the people that show up on game day, I wanted to give another shout out to Kira. I don't know how much you guys were able to talk to her in the back. I wasn't around her a ton, but we always watched on the live stream, and just consistently blown away by her ability to go out in the final heat and not only hold her own, but like go out there and beat a lot of those girls. I thought all weekend long she was just so amazing.
Yes.
Very
Kira
consistent.
Is a gamer, and she's also one of the most positive humans I've ever met in my entire life. Yeah. And, she had her moments of disappointment. She knew which events were probably going to be her worst, and that can be very frustrating on the floor. But I feel like she always outperforms training in competition, and she was extremely consistent the entire weekend. I don't know exactly. I'm assuming she probably fell a little bit after the handstand walk and then climbed a bit back up on bag 9. But not only that, she's so supportive of other people, and I think that's missing sometimes. People get so caught up in the competition, they're really stressed out and serious, and just to have somebody that's always complimentary and might not always come off as genuine, but she's kind of like a Noah. It's like if you're around her, like she means it. She has even said she usually roots for other people and believes in other people more than herself, which is actually something she probably needs to work on a little bit more. But I think she had so much fun, and the amount of training that she's able to do, which is much less than a lot of these other girls, like extremely impressive what she's able to put together on the floor.
Yeah. One thing I thought we could talk about from a programming standpoint that was different from this one, maybe to other semifinals, was how...
Hold that thought. We're going to take a quick pee break, and then we'll come right back. Stay tuned for the Corpus Animus podcast. All right, we're back from our pee break. Adam, you were about to say something super profound.
And then I totally forgot what it was.
No, you didn't. Come on.
No, I did. No, we were talking about Kira. We were talking about how impressive it was that she was able to come out, perform like she did, and still just Kira being the genuine human that she is. I think that it is easy sometimes to take somebody like that and be like, oh man, just so over the top. But when you know her in person, it really is like that. The analogy of Noah just was like, man, that really hit for me, because it's like, that's just Kira.
Yeah. That's
just who she is. So shout out to Kira. Great performance. We had 2 male individuals there also, Tanner Balaz and then Wyatt Taylor. Tanner was there with Coach Kyle Ruth. I thought Tanner's weekend just got better and better as it went. I know that he has qualified for a lot of big events before, but this was one where it seemed like just over the course of the weekend, he really lived up to, like, I think his own expectations of himself and what he's capable of out on the floor. I don't know if you guys were able to talk to them too much. I wasn't there to see because I was with the team most of the time.
Yeah. I mean, Tanner's improved at in-person comps, I think, every time he touches the floor. And I think sometimes when you develop a reputation, either a self-fulfilling prophecy or there's a trend, it can be hard to kind of break yourself out of that mentality, especially if things go wrong. And he had a decent start to the weekend, and then had, I think the yoke repeater workout was probably his lowest finish, and I don't know if he had any expectations on that, but he really just stayed in it, and then from there on, he just continued to get better, and he seemed very, I would say, like, laid back in compared to other events we've seen in the past where you can get a little anxious or stressed out about things. And I feel like he just understands himself a lot better as an athlete. He's more confident in what he is capable of and isn't out there necessarily trying to emulate somebody or prove a point necessarily, but just execute to the best of his ability.
Yeah, I think, and I don't know for sure, I think the Isabel time was a big PR for him.
Oh, that's awesome.
Yeah, so I think that was really cool. And then like you said, like maybe day 2, maybe Saturday wasn't the best finishes, but his ability to come back and have the Sunday that he did and have 2 of his best finishes, I want to say it was like 8th and 5th or something, if I remember right. That last one was awesome. He was in that last heat and he still performed just as well as anybody else there. So yeah, just a solid weekend all around. Tanner and Kyle together. And then Wyatt was there. Wyatt is one of Coach James's clients, even though James couldn't make it down. So we kind of like team helped Wyatt as much as he needed / wanted. It didn't sound like he wanted or need much, but you were able to help him a little bit with the yoke and the run.
Yeah, a little bit. So Wyatt didn't have a ton of exposure to the yoke. So one of the things that I wanted to do for him right off the bat was make sure that the yoke was set to get high enough off the ground to where he could actually move it a little bit.
Yeah.
And then we adjusted his hand placement because like most other people, when you initially pick up the yoke, your first thing you want to do is put your hands like you're doing a back squat. But we had him go out wide to help guide the yoke and allow him to move the implement a little bit faster.
It's interesting because yoke placement and height, I feel like obviously it changes athlete to athlete based on height, but it changes from the weight of it also.
Yes.
Like
For sure.
if it's super heavy, you want to make sure that you're not doing like a quarter squat out of the bottom.
Right.
If it's super light, you don't necessarily want it to be too low because then when it swings forward, when you first pick it up, the front of it hits the ground, which happened to a lot of people.
Yeah.
When they're sprinting out there, they start it too fast and it tips forward and those front slides hit the ground. So
yeah, and these yokes were not heavy by those athlete standards.
Right.
Like if you and me are out there, yeah, they're heavy, but for
I'm belting up before everyone.
but for everyone else, you know, for the athletes that are capable of being at that level, they're not super heavy. So we wanted to get them plenty of clearance off the ground, and then I just gave him kind of a quick run warm up just to help him out there, just because he was kind of standing around, and I was like, "What are we doing for running?" So. That was kind of the extent of my interactions. I checked in with him a handful of times throughout the weekend, but he was just ecstatic to be there. And
didn't you say he just got back from like a...
He was in Greece for his honeymoon is what he told me. He just got back from that. He's training for a half marathon. He just got a dog a week ago.
Living the dream.
This man, yeah, he was very happy to be there. I think he was one of the very last backfill spots at the same time. So this was an experience that really was like just the experience for him, and I hope that he had a good time out of it. But it was cool to meet him. It was cool to chat for a little bit. It made me jealous and made me want to go to Greece. But yeah, other than that, it was just cool to meet him.
Yeah.
Well, the big thing we haven't talked about, and the reason you were there, was you had a team.
Yeah,
and
we had the on-site team. They worked their way all the way up onto the podium by the end of the weekend, which, I mean, I don't, like, if I'm being honest, I didn't expect podium. I thought that maybe top 5 was a good mix. The interesting thing with the team was JR, another reason why I'm always going to be a fan of JR is he released these workouts, specifically the team workouts, way, way in advance. So a lot of these teams who knew that they were going got the chance to run through these. If they had a worm on site, they were able to run through those and like the logistics of it and everything, which the more that you can do that in those team-based setups, like I feel like the team plans have to be dialed in as closely as possible versus like individual ones like we were talking about with Ryan. Like sometimes it helps to just sort of like the individual go by feel. Like they might know where they want their race to be. They might know what risks they want to take. With a team, you can't really call too many audibles out there, especially like just an individual. Like if something's going wrong, they can notice and they can adjust. But for the most part, you want to have your plans really dialed in. The team, after the in-affiliate semifinals, went their separate ways. Bryce went away, Gus went away. So we didn't have the ability to run through all of the workouts in full, basically until the weekend before when we got them all back. So to be able to perform to the level that they performed with really only touching the worm twice as that team of 4, not having a chance to run through the others in full, we basically only did intervals of them, I thought was just really cool. It was basically like surprise after surprise all weekend long for me. I thought that they outperformed my expectations. I hope that they outperformed their own expectations, but it was just cool to see them all like as a unit just completely like have trust and faith in each other and just sort of like allow that positive energy to pull them into places that they probably didn't think that they could do.
And it's got to feel pretty good when you came off the online and you qualified for the games, but there's all they didn't review any of the videos to then be able to go out onto a floor and podium. And
you don't want to have any of that hanging over your head, especially like they were basically like one of the last ones in. And so it's like, oh, well, anybody could have done that. There was no video review. Like nobody knows like who earned what and who deserves what. But I think that we showed out on the floor, and I'll always be of this mind that I think that the in-person competition should always carry a little bit more weight than online stuff, that they can absolutely step up to the plate, that they are competitors and that they have each other's backs. And yeah, it's going to be a fun summer training for the games of that crew.
I got to catch the last event to watch that legless rope climb one, and man, their execution on that was perfect.
Yeah.
That was a huge separator.
What was really we were talking about it before in terms of the event winners not coming from the final heat. Like they started pulling away from 11:24 in the middle lane, and I was like, all right, this is it. Like they can trust their rope climbs. All four of them are really good in this sort of format, especially with Faith and Gus being able to lead the way on short rests like that. And then I heard from the prior heat the time to beat of like 10:20 or something. Like, holy crap!
Yeah,
like what were they doing? They must have
yeah.
been sprinting the whole time. But yeah, that event was really, really fun to end the weekend on. It was something that we were coming off the high of Isabel that morning, going way better than anybody expected, just way better. Bryn powering all of her reps, Faith taking multiple reps, the guys doing what they needed to do. And then coming into that event, it was just like good positive vibes. So to start pulling away and enjoy the race and have confidence that they were going to be able to close was really cool.
Yeah, I thought they also executed extremely well on the box jump event the day before.
Yeah.
And one of the things that I think is a testament to all of the athletes and then you as a coach is only one of them has team experience on the floor at that level, right?
Yeah.
So 3 rookies-ish showing up onto the Syndicate crown floor and executing the teamwork, the synchronized teamwork was especially well done.
Yeah. They all have, I would say, high-end competition experience, but the team is definitely a different brand, right? Like it's one thing to have your plan in mind and just like know that you can adjust on your own. But especially for me as a coach, like I think everybody knows this about me by now in terms of like the game plans that I make are almost always overly conservative, especially in a long event like that. Like I'm always going to assume that the race is going to be on the back half. So on that, deadlifts were probably slower than most people. The box jumps were slow and steady. Even the rows were kind of like dialed back. And then we said, like, once you guys hit those ring muscle ups, like you're going to go. Like you're going to go. This is where you're going to separate. And I think they were probably like 7th or 8th to the muscle ups, and then maybe like 3rd or 4th coming off of it. And it was just cool to see them sort of like trust that their identity as a team to be able to like execute that kind of plan, having never done it before as a group out on the floor.
Did they test that one, or was that the one that it was just intervals of?
That was just intervals. Yeah, and the intervals of that one are hard because the extra reps of the box jumps and the extra reps of the kettlebells, they change a lot of things.
For sure.
Yeah, so it was cool. They're a group that I think can be confident in their muscle up capacity and their legless rope climb capacity. So I knew that we didn't have to do all of it, but it is still something else entirely to only do like a quarter of the volume. Be like, all right, yeah, we'll just extrapolate that out and you're good to go. Not everybody can trust that, but they trusted it and it paid off.
That's awesome.
And then on that last event, they were in the lane next to Ryan and Jenna. What was their team's name?
CrossFit Woodbine. They're from Blue Crab. Yeah. So Mike McGoldrick trains Ryan, and then Coach Matt Gilpin trains Jenna. Yeah, I was able to check in with them throughout the weekend. I think that they had an absolute blast out there competing.
On Isabel?
Isabel, they got second overall, which was amazing. They blazed their way through that. That team was so strong and that barbell was moving so fast. It was crazy to watch them.
I was behind Ryan's wife in the crowd during that one, and he has his kids there, and they were all just going crazy. It was fun to watch.
No, they loved it. They loved it. I mean, they're the kind of team that, they're dancing in the corrals before they go out. They're out there laughing and joking while they're out there on the runs, and the other team's doing the handstand walk. So they were a lot of fun to work with. They had a really good back and forth in chemistry with the TTT on-site team. So it was just a fun weekend overall with them around.
Overall, how do you think about the programming for team comp?
I thought it was good. I mean, I'm not biased at all. Yeah, the team got second. It was perfect programming because the team got second. Yeah.
Well, it was a good weekend. We also had some other semis going on at this time, and we were driving down to Knoxville. We were streaming Renegade.
Yeah,
because we have
Renegade
Sarah,
games.
who's working with Kyle now, and
we had
Toby.
four people there. We had Kyle had Toby Buckland, who did end up qualifying. So congratulations to Toby. He had Jake Hendry on the guy's side. Kyle also now trains Sarah Sigmund's daughter. And then I had Evie Hollis there. So 4 individuals of that. And Mike, I had somebody as well. I forget his name, actually.
We'll edit it on the screen.
Shout out Mike Sky. Sorry about that.
Shout out Mike Sky. But the big story there was Evie. So we were in Syndicate, and then I see a Hiller video go up on there. And I was like, oh, boy, what's this? And I was like, oh, it's Evie. And so what happened in that clip, and what was your thoughts?
Yeah, well, I mean, just a very brief backstory. Going into that, especially in Evie's division, we kind of knew that it was going to be a 3-horse race. It was going to be Evie and Sarah and Christina, and it was just going to go back and forth all weekend long. Rebel was one where, I mean, we talked about the programming for Syndicate and how we liked it and how we liked the thought process. Rebel had 9 events for them. I don't really have strong feelings on that one way or another. I think that for a test of fitness, I don't think that you need 9. I think especially at that level, I think that you can get it done with less than that, probably like 6 or 7. This is also probably my bias because if we had stopped at 7, Evie would have made it through. But yeah, so it was just back and forth, and it was really tight because the way that the scoring system works is if those 3 are always at the top, it's very, very hard to gain points. It's hard to gain points, and it's hard to, well, it can be easy to lose points if something goes wrong. But if something goes wrong early on, it's just hard because you need other help from other people to be able to make that back up. Sarah took a hit on 333, and she just tried to work her way back up all weekend long, but it was just always going to be hard for her to make up that gap on Evie and Christina. So anyways, Evie and Christina, over the course of the whole weekend, were probably separated at most by, I wouldn't say, like 10 points. It was just back and forth, super tight all weekend long. We knew it was going to be that way. Evie just executed as well as I think that both of us could have imagined all weekend long. There was high pressure events, there was weakness events, there was strength events, and she did amazing at all of them. So going into event 9 of the weekend, her and Christina were tied on points. So it was basically like whoever beats the other person here is going to win this event. It's not an event, so it was deadlifts and strict handstand push-ups and ring muscle-ups. I wouldn't say it's an event that's like Evie's wheelhouse. These are things that we've worked a ton on, strict handstand push-ups being one of them, rings being another. And so it was something that we knew, like, all right, this is going to be a good race. You've got to, picture yourself, like, visualize the future that you want and try and make it manifest itself. Like, understand that there's going to be different points in this race. You can't necessarily just have blinders on because you got to go out and beat this person. And right from the very first round of that, they do their deadlifts. They go back to the strict handstand push-ups. And I couldn't see this on the stream because they went over and were showing somebody else. So her first strict handstand push-up was a no rep, and then another no rep, and then another no rep. What they had briefed them on in the past, and this was briefed to them about the hips being locked out over the course of the handstand push-up and making sure that they're not getting that overextension that happens sometimes at the lumbar. So she was getting no reps from her judge. There was other judges that were sitting there watching who afterwards came up and said that those no reps probably shouldn't have been no reps, that they should have counted. And even after all of that, the event organizer said that they were willing to give her back some of those penalized no reps to give her time back. But the problem is with that kind of competition and with the back and forth of them and knowing that everything came down to that, it's the psychological cost of the no reps, not necessarily the physical or the time that happens. You're in a race, you know that this is for the game spot, you know you've got to beat this person, and then the movement that you would say is probably like the weakest point or like the biggest separator, like all of a sudden like you're getting no reps that you don't really know how to fix them. It was basically just like it got ripped out of her hands. And it's something where you don't, any sport, you don't want that to happen. Like you want it to play out between the teams. Not to say that there's anything that's like unjust or unfair about it. It's just like that's a scenario where I feel like we need to go out of our way as a sport to try and make sure that the subjectivity of the standards is minimized as much as possible. And like one of the things that I thought JR did a really good job of was like, the line on the GHD, like at Mayhem, they briefed us that, hey, you can't have excessive placement forward on this. And then like we kept pushing back, like, what does that mean? What does that mean? And so JR just said, all right, we're going to put a tape line. If we see that tape line, it's a no rep. Just get your butt back over it. Having the line for the handstand push-ups, I feel like is as black and white of a standard as you can come up with. If you can control the placement of that line, width and placement from the wall, you can get out ahead of, I think, some of the hip extension standards that end up coming into play with that. And that's what I'd want, because I understand why the standard's there, right?
Why? Why is it there?
The standard's there because there's girls that can overextend their lumbar to the point where their center of mass doesn't necessarily change height when they're doing their handstand push-up. And so what they want to do is they want to make sure that the whole body is moving up and down on the handstand push-up. Evie, if she has natural lordosis of her lumbar, her center of mass can still move up and down like that, but it doesn't look like she's doing the work to the standard because of that bend in her back. And so the standard exists to make sure that you're not necessarily cheating it and doing less work than you have to. But the subjectivity of the standard means that somebody that has a certain body type is just going to look like they're not doing it right. And so to me, I don't know what the solution is. I'm not an event organizer. I just would like to see something where you don't leave it up to a call by a judge. There's going to be some judges that are just naturally more strict. There's going to be some judges that might see something different. Even on the stream, like right after they showed Evie, they showed another athlete who had probably even more bend in her back who was getting good reps. So it just, the back and forth and the difference in between the lanes is something where it just kind of like made a highlight of the fact that this is a standard that changes from lane to lane and something that we shouldn't have to deal with.
It happened on the men's side too. I watched that last event for both of them, and yeah, it was hard to watch.
Yeah. So I don't know. It's the nature of our sport that everybody has a different judge, and each judge has their own lens about how they're thinking about the standard. You can go back to refereeing decisions or umpire decisions in other sports, and like they change games, they do, but everybody has the same umpire. If everybody has a different judge and that judge looks at something differently because it's their subjective interpretation of the standard, it just changes how things are executed out on the floor. And so it's heartbreaking for Evie because, even if Christina had beat her, it's something that we can live with. But this one just makes it a little bit harder to her stomach because the race couldn't even play out.
Do you think there's any merit to doing something like triathlons do where they video review your transitions or whatever, and then you get penalized later in the event? So after you've already completed your portion, you get penalized and have to serve that penalty either at the next transition or something like that. That way they can race.
Maybe something like that. The only feedback that I have for that is in online qualifiers where the review happens after the point, there can be a difference in terms of knowing very early on if you're doing something wrong that you can adjust, because then it would change the level of the penalty that you would get.
Right.
Like if I'm getting no reps on my handstand push-ups and it's something that I know that I can make a quick, easy fix of, I want to change it right there in that moment to minimize the amount of no reps. But yeah, I think that it's just hard in this sport because, like I said, it wasn't necessarily the physical toll of it. It wasn't the time loss that really made a huge impact. It was like the psychological impact of being like, I can't even race right now because I don't know what this judge wants of me, and like feeling like the race kind of got ripped away from her.
There is a physical toll though too. Like even if, say, she got 100% of her reps or no reps in round one and she cleaned it up after that or whatever the judge thought they were good, you still did double the amount of work. You don't get that energy back.
Yeah, no, absolutely. I'm not saying that there is no physical toll. I'm saying that the physical toll is almost like secondary to what it actually did to her mindset to be like, this is completely out of my hands right now. Yeah. It's a helpless feeling. Yeah. Yep. So it sucks. It's heartbreaking. It's something where, that's the game spot that we thought that, not that she deserved it or anything else, because nobody deserves anything in sports, but she was certainly capable of qualifying in that field with that level of workout. And it sucked to kind of feel like it was taken out of your hands.
And speaking of suck, we had Matt Gilpin and his wife Lisa go out to what was that one called?
Torian Pro.
Torian, and then they tried to come home, and it sounds like they're stuck.
Yeah, their visa application got denied. So they're trying to figure that out right now. We hope that we can see Matt again.
Yeah, the cat's here, so I know they're going to be back for the cat.
Oh,
yeah. He says that his visa is still good through July, so maybe we can try and get him back at some point. But yeah, we're working on that.
So I think I have a key to his apartment because we live in the same complex. Party at Matt's house this weekend, you guys.
Yeah.
We'll get those Gilpins back at some point.
All right. Well, I guess that's a good place to wrap it up. Any final thoughts?
No, I mean, I shout out to Wilson and his crew for running Syndicate over all these years. Like, it's a labor of love, and the volunteers that do it for Wilson are incredibly loyal, and he runs those competitions so well. So I'll just say thank you to him and all those volunteers for a job well done. And one thing I was going to say earlier with like Wyatt and even Bree, they might not have been there if the backfill process wasn't, like, they didn't fill out the competition, because the rules I do think changed slightly after a lot of people qualified for the games after in affiliate. And while I will say maybe it wasn't as exciting race because it didn't have all the high power stars, it gave those people an opportunity to get live in-person competition experience, which I think is also super invaluable. So, I mean, I think maybe one of the big takeaways for Bree, I'm sure she was very grateful to be there, even though you guys were on, 2 weeks of notice?
Sure
and
were.
Wyatt basically probably got notice while he was in Greece. But those experiences, they are not guaranteed ever for anyone. And I think I was even talking to another young guy that Lydia knows, Jace Peck, and he said he was dealing with some injuries, and I think he was also a backfill. But I was like, man, like, kudos to you for showing up, because yeah, these opportunities don't always come around. You never know what can happen. You can have a perfect prep and, line up your qualifications, and something happens, you get sick before qualifier. So, so shout out to Syndicate for filling up the stands to the best of their ability. And I think they ran a great competition, and, I hope they do it again next year.
Very well-run competition. Yeah.
And the elephant in the room, we almost forgot the highlight of the weekend, you guys. The freaking Big Red Machine was in the building. Did y'all see him down there with Sevon and the boys?
They have no idea.
I don't know.
Kane.
Oh.
Still no idea.
WWE.
No.
The
Mayor of Knoxville.
Mayor of Knoxville. Yeah.
Is
Come
he
on.
really?
Yeah.
Oh, I do. I know who you're talking about
Oh,
now.
I still got nothing.
I want to direct all of our traffic, if you made it this far into the video, go find, there's a video some fan made when Kane was running, Glenn Jacobs was running for mayor. Some fan took a video. You know how like when two different people running for the same mayor or president have like shit talk ads? Well, someone took a shit talk ad where it's like, don't vote for Glenn Jacobs because blah, blah, blah. But it was all his in-ring stuff. So it was like, he once burned his whole family alive. It was like all this WWE, but it's made to look legit. So
That's awesome.
go find that on YouTube.
Nice.
See you guys.
Bye.
Signing off.
Yeah.